All right, guys, Sam back with you, November 30th. Here we're going to finish up with a look at Ripple to Bitcoin. So nice to look at a cryptocurrency that's actually moving higher, right? We're not in just a relentless bear. Now, some interesting things at play here. So, let's see. I'm on a 4-hour here this is on Poloniex. It just happens to be where I'm trading it. Now, these are some entries here that we posted within the members Discord today. Members here watching have likely have already seen these, but yeah, just there's some opportunity here. So from this pivot here, you can see we've had this potential here, this impulsive move here, nice little ABC, very clear 3-wave correction. Now it is deep. Right? We don't hold the 6.5. We know at wave 2 anywhere from the 50 to the 786. Right? We break the 65, but we're in that little more in that. It could be some. Could be we bumped into a little structure here that, if we look here, might have offered some support here, some prior resistance. It's hard to say, right? But nonetheless, so there we go. So we have a corner pocket. Now, it turns out that it's a corner pocket with a shift pitchfork. So here's our corner, which means we have 80% probability, if that low holds, making the median line, which we do to the tick. All right, so there we go. We've got a potential 1-2-1-2. Right, if you're a bull, that's just the kind of scenario that you want. So what that means, so if this is accurately identified and this is indeed a 1-2, well, we're trying to get to this 3, so we can measure for that. So shorthand here, even though we've gone deep here, this is going to be close to the 1-6-1-8. So if I take this length of the 1, project from the 2. All right, well, here's my high probability zone. Here's my 1-6-1-8 to 1-7-5. That's the third that we're trying to get. Now, does it stay in alignment with this set of median lines? That's no way to know, but certainly we're off to a good start. So if you look at the potential prospects there of the risk reward, should we get the full Monty and get up to the full 1-6-1-8? Well, there's 7.5 to 1. All right, assuming now this is asking for a little bit of a pullback here. You could buy it right now at the market. What are we talking about? A very small percentage here, and the difference between that entry here and where we're sitting now, slightly beyond it here. But if you're going up here, a difference of a few bucks. So certainly a contender here now. So we've got the subdivision to support this. So let's go down here. Let me go to a 2-hour here. We'll get a better look at this. So let me reset here. All right, so with that identified here, so we can take the median lines off just to clear up the chart. So let's do the same thing here. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. Okay, 1-2. Well, it looks like I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, it's a diagonal, right? If it's going to play, so here, clear overlap of the 1. But it looks like A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. So it qualifies, right? So we have the subdivision. So it definitely looks like a diagonal to give us a lead. So we'd have a leading diagonal in the 1 wave of the 3rd wave. So if that is the good 1, and we go 1 into the 2, well, so now we got to change a little bit here, because now we're trying to pull the 2 off of the idea that this is a completed leading diagonal. So grabbing that low here up to the 1, so here's a perfect tag of the 50, right? So you can see why the buy there. So on the assumption that this is 1-2-1-2, well, we've come a pretty good indication that we're on the right track here. The fact that we've come to the 50 the tick. Now, it's not relevant as would relate to an Elliott count, but note here just the idea of prior resistance now converts to the support. Right? So now we don't know that we're blasting off of here, but we certainly have the ingredients here for a good low. Structure, pattern, price, 50 to the tick. Right, hard not to like that. Now, it doesn't mean we couldn't roll over, go back down to the 618. Nothing says we couldn't, but right now, the fact that I've got a little pivot and a reaction there, I'm looking for buy side. So given that, 1-2, well, where could that be going? Well, if we're using that as the 50, we know that the 3rd here, it would be relative to yellow. The 3rd would be up here. We know it's going to be very close to the -100. So 1, 2, 3. Well, a couple things we can do. Of course, we could always go back to a set of median lines. This pivot here makes me pause a little bit here. So I look at that and I go, okay, well I know that's going to be a modified shift. So if I grab this here to this pivot here, well, let's go to original, see how this looks here in terms of, oh, so that's kind of interesting. So with this, so here I get a nice cluster here. I've got confluence here of structure, and I've got an algo target, I've got the median line, and I've got the upper parallel on the channel. So I like this as a contender, but that's a long way from my third. So potentially you've got setting up here all of the ingredients to get the one wave of the third wave, right? Remember, this has to do something like that. We got to have an impulse here. So if that's going to play, and I'm just kind of eyeballing here and free drawing, but if this is going to go 1, 2, 3, you'd anticipate a return to the median line. Maybe the lower parallel here would be interesting. If this channel line here, although you call it a trend line, offers the support, that wouldn't be terribly surprising. That's where you might look for it. Now, again, we don't have any of this information. It's just the idea is, can you construct a roadmap that would make sense? So let me pull these lines off here. All right, so possible here, nice target, nice fat target. So thus the target here, and why we lay this out as two potential trades. So first entry down here in this zone that we're sitting in, on the idea that we're going to get a corner pocket. So corner pocket, right? Remember, if this low holds, 80% probability of getting there, right? Best odds in trading, bar none. Okay, so if that, now key being if this pivot holds, right? It's right at a 50. No reason to assume that it wouldn't. We know we have algo participation there. Dominant swing, we're at a 50. No, we don't have to wonder what happens there. Okay, so off they go. Now that doesn't mean that it's just off to the races. We could come down here, they'll defend it here, they'll revert, they'll stop out here and then take the next 50. But right now, no reason to assume anything other than that, unless this pivot breaks. So thus the tight stop here. If this breaks, then when the corner pocket starts to break down, potentially the Elliott count has to be reconsidered. If the 2 is coming down here to the golden zone, I mean, it doesn't look quite as good as it does here. Now, still, that's certainly technically valid here, and it could be that we're going to run into support here with this lower trend line here, or the trend line of the channel. Maybe, right? You got a couple of possible outcomes here, but I think this is very reasonable here to be a buyer here. Maybe this is a small entry here, and if we start to get some traction, then you get a little pullback. You can add with some more size here, going for the bigger targets. Right, we've got the big targets up here, right? So you don't want to take this, have it ultimately get there, and you just got, approximately 30% of it. So, that's just a judgment call as to whether, because if we tag that and then we start the retrace, how comfortable are you giving back 50% of that? Right? If this is going to go 1, 2, you'd anticipate the next pivot at the 50. Right? So that's always the conundrum. You don't know that we're going there, that we're doing the 50. You might just pause. Not uncommon. Trading principle number 3. If we're not going to pivot at the median line, it will often pause there before it decides which way it's going to go. If we're going to pause, are we coming down to the lower parallel? Or are we going to pause and go up to the other parallel? Just, we don't know until we see a reaction there. But the fact that we're likely to bump into some profit taking from algo buying down here on the assumption that we are going there, then that's a reasonable place to consider a partial. Retrace could be a reload. May take the full thing off here and then wait for the next 50 to reload here to try and catch the bigger one. So you have a lot of choices here when you start to get movement like this. So 1, 2, we've got the potential now for the big 3. So let's take that off here. All right, there's not a lot else here other than we can see that as we look at this, you can kind of just, we draw this up over here. We see all this nice market acceptance right here, right in this. So if I pull it over here, all nice and happy here. Well, look at this big low volume node that we get down here, right? So that looks kind of interesting. So if we're going to go, so you'd have potentially this kind of a scenario. If this comes down here, we get a little push, but then it rolls over again, we could easily come down into this. So one of two things happens here. Either we pivot just before it, which commonly you'll see, or if we tag into it, we'll rip right out of it as the market does not have acceptance here. Or, of course, the other possibility here is we come down here, we do this, and then we break through it, we come to the point of control where we know we have market acceptance, and that becomes the pivot, right? So a lot of different scenarios here, but right now, no reason to assume. There's no reason to assume the 50 doesn't hold. Just there's not, I mean, even if we go to the oscillators, not a lot here. This being, approaching this oversold zone here. This is a volume oscillator here, so potentially now that starts to pivot. It's, you know, you're making a calculation here that the risk profile here is, so this here with that tight stop is what, 11.3 to 1. Right, so what's the downside? Well, that tight stop could easily get tagged on just a little volatility. That's the downside to it, right? So then you gotta consider, well, if I get stopped on the first one, do I still like it enough to consider the big one? Right? Always there's traders' decisions that you have to make through the course of first entering and then managing through the trade. Maybe if it comes down here, you want to give this a little more room to the other side of the 65 and average in your prices. So you end up with a net that's, so you've got a better price on your entry, so more potential. Targets don't move, just how you're managing what's happening down here as we look to shape this too. Now if we go, let me try a 15-minute here and see what this looks like. Do we have the right ingredients here for a 2? Well, it's okay. So let me, it's a little wonky here. So we have, this is the pivot up, and then we come down, then we do that. So it looks like you've got to go A, B, and it looks like into a double top. So down to the 15-minute, it looks like you've got to go A, B into the B, and then you got to work the C out of that. One, does that break it? No, it doesn't. So you could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, boy, it's ugly. There's no question. Even this. Oh, let's try the 30 minutes, see if that gets any better structure. See, I don't like it as much here as this is the A, because then you've got a very shallow C. We can't discount this. A, B, C into an A, B. Boy, that's ugly, right? So it's not ideal. So it's anybody's guess as to how to count that. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't overlap here. 5, maybe. It's a bit of a crapshoot on that here. So thus, right? So on the first entry here, tighter on the stop, right? The assumption is the pivot is in at the 50. If it's going to come back down, well, your choice is, you can ask for better pricing and try and catch it between the two, or you take the very, very small loser here and consider a reload as we approach the 618. Those are your choices. Okay, so let's go back to the 2 hour here. All right, so trying to get a roadmap together here. I do like this here as a target. So that risk reward at being 7.21 is not bad here, and that's with a pivot. That's pivot just below the 50 here on the assumption that that's the good low, right? If it comes back down, I'll take this is me personally. I'd rather take the small loser, reevaluate. I'll go again. I'll go 2, 3, 4 times if I need to, if I still like what I see here in terms of, right? So you don't have to, those small little losers takes one, catch this, right? Offset all those little losers rather nicely, right? So it's trade management. It's half the battle. So there you go. That's at least something that we can put in front of you that looks like there's opportunity on the buy side here. Now, we're not confirmed yet here on this too, but we have a contender with the to the tick pivot at the 50. Right? Just watch the money management. That's always the key to it, right? The trade analysis, the entry, that's the easy part. That's the fun part, right? This is the hard part, right? You're dealing with fear and greed, right? Once money gets involved, that's what makes it difficult. All right, so there you go. At least something you can tee up and chew on for the weekend. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think that would be a good sign for all of crypto. All right, guys, that's a wrap here on a Friday afternoon. You guys have yourself a good weekend. Members, well, I'll be around over the weekend. And if you're watching on YouTube, well, there's a few things to consider. All right, guys, talk to you later.